Michael, welcome to Podcastina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for doing the show. Do you mind if we start with a little bit of background on what it is you do?
No, not at all. Not at all. About 100 years ago, I joined the Air Force, and that's what began my leadership learning, I should say. And then I went into my own business. I went corporate. I came out of that corporate environment, went into my own business again. And then I wound up being a corporate speaker on networking and communications, especially for Gen Z.
Is Gen Z the worst at networking?
Well, I don't want to annoy half your followers, but it's really a problem because what they are expecting and what they're getting are two different things. So they're expecting to walk into an office environment, work 1, 2, maybe even 3 days a week for about 4 hours a day, and that's it. When in reality, that's not what they should be looking for.
Okay, let's zoom out a little bit. I would love to hear, as someone who works in networking, that's your specialty. What's your working definition of the term?
Working definition of networking is being social without being social. Because what I teach, because I have a lot of coaching clients, and what I am teaching is you go into a business environment, a business networking event, and the last thing you want to do is talk business. And I know that you spent all this money and you have to go and you have to make a sale and you have to do this and do that. That's the wrong philosophy. You see, I went to the school of hard knocks. I learned how to do everything wrong before I did it correctly. So when you first walk into that event, you're looking to see how much you can help somebody else before even yourself. So, for instance, when you're walking up to a table and you hear the conversation, there's a lot more to this than I'm really dumbing it down. You hear that conversation, and first you have to evaluate, is this a conversation that you want to be a part of? If it is, great. Then you wait for that conversation to come around to you. And what you say, it better be pretty good because you're supposedly the expert in your field. So what you say, and all you're trying to do is gain the attention of 2 or 3 of the people. Once they turn around, I use something called FORM: family, occupation, recreation, and a message. And you get them talking about that because you and I both know people love to talk about themselves. So let them talk. And they talk and talk and talk, and you kind of finesse the conversation around to what they do for a living. And then after they're finished, you pause and you look at them and you repeat back some of what they just said. And you say, you know what? I like you. I like what you do for a living and how you do it. How can I make you more successful? How can I be a good referral source for you? And if I did my job correctly, they'll say something like, Mike, I don't even know what the hell you do yet, and you're trying to make me more successful. That's right.
Now, what is the point of all of that? What's the point of networking? What are we trying to get on the flip side of it?
Well, networking, your main goal is to make money, right? That's the main goal. So you wouldn't be out there networking unless you're just socializing, right? You wouldn't be out there networking unless you're trying to make money. But I use the pandemic as kind of like a line in the sand. Pre-pandemic, it was really transactional. Networking was transactional. Post-pandemic, it's really relational. So it's the relationships that you can acquire And how do you acquire those relationships? Well, it goes back to the networking of know you, like you, trust you, they'll do business with you. Everybody knows you, you're a great person. Likes you, well, you're not going to be liked by everybody, so that narrows the field down just a little bit. But trust, that trust factor is so very important. So when you first go into this networking event, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to gain the trust. And once you gain the trust, well, how do you do that? Well, you have to bring value to that relationship. And bring value, you do something for them, or you introduce them to somebody else, because you're increasing their trust of you, but you're increasing your value to them. And once you do that, they'll be more open to you sell them whatever you're selling.
How do you know that you've done this enough to where it's okay for you to ask for something?
Well, okay, I use 3 as a certain number of attempts, right? I'll introduce somebody, I'll give them somebody. If I try to connect with someone on LinkedIn and they're a roofing company, then I'm doing this because this is something that I've done with a past client. So I found an article, metal roofs versus asphalt roofs. And I sent it to him and I said, look, I think you might find this valuable. Have a good time, have at it. And I do that 2 or 3 times, and either they'll respond by saying, hey, thank you, that was great information. And then 2 or 3 times afterwards, I say, oh, this is great. Would you like to grab a cup of coffee? And if they're out of state or far away, then I'll say, would you like to grab a virtual cup of coffee? And let's just sit down and talk for 5 minutes. So if you're good enough, and listen, networking is a skill and a talent. You have to practice, practice, practice. So the first time you go out, you're going to suck. You're going to be horrible. But the thing is, you have to go out there again and again. And pretty soon you're going to be good enough where this will come as second nature for you. Right? So you have that cup of coffee, that virtual cup of coffee, and you see whether or not you're a good fit. But now you have to do your homework. So you have to look into that company and see what they're all about. So here's the thing. I just spoke to a Rotary, and I explained this the very same way. They have a problem. And of course, you have to be the person to solve that problem. But you don't leave it there. So if they have a problem that's here, you want to be here because you want to meet them after you solve the problem. Because you don't want to be that person and say, okay, look, thank you very much, goodbye. Right? You want to go and meet them, and you'll create a relationship, a long-lasting relationship, and that's what you're after.
How do I know if I suck at networking and need to get better at it?
Well, first of all, there's two things, introverts and extroverts, right? If you're an extrovert, this is really easy because you go out there and talk and you talk to everybody. You might talk too much. That could be a problem, but all right. If you're an introvert, you're probably saying, wait a second, I'm not going to a networking event because I'm going to suck at it. What are you talking about? I'm going to grab a drink, go to a wall, and stay there for the whole night. When I have something for introverts. But being an extrovert and knowing how well you did, I used to be in the mortgage industry. I used to go to these networking events. I used to come home with a shoebox filled with business cards. And I would say, look how good I did. I did horrible because I couldn't remember one conversation I had with anybody. But now, when you go to a 3-4 hour event, come back with about 15 cards, maybe 20, because then you had you spoke with them, you found out about their family, the occupation, where they like to go skiing or boating, or they play baseball, or whatever the case may be. And the more information you get, by the way, you take their business card. On the back of the business card, you write down the date, the name of the function where you're at, and something you spoke about. Because for your follow-up, all of that information will be very, very important. And this is how you get better, by learning all these tricks, and you learn what to say and what not to say, what to do, what not to do. You have to be present. You have to have your shoulders straight. You have to look at them in the eye. You can't say, oh, that's somebody else that I want to talk to. And all of a sudden your attention span goes. You have to be with that person, right? These are all things that you have to train for. But when you finally get it, you're going to enjoy it.
This is super applicable in my business. So I'm a comedian, and there's social functions quite often, whether it's just another comedian's birthday where there's a lot of us gathered, or some kind of professional event, like say a comedy festival, or even just a show where you're interacting with other comedians in a green room. Because I think it's probably pretty increasingly rare that people are showing up to like business functions where you're giving out business cards, right? That's kind of we got to look at it through the lens of like social functions and where people are actually meeting each other these days. And so there's always an opportunity when I'm at one of these shows. Other comedians give you work all the time, but you don't want to seem too thirsty, right? You don't want to seem like you're just trying to use somebody and leverage them for what you can get out of them. And there's almost this kind of like sense of that networking can be a bad thing, right? That it's, you're just coming in to be transactional and you're only talking to someone because you want something from them. How do we start to peel that back and do it in a way that doesn't feel icky? You probably get that question a lot of like, oh, networking feels a little gross. How do I make it feel less transactional?
Well, that's such a good question, because as I said, the pandemic, pre-pandemic, it was all transactional. Now it's more relational. And what I mean by that, when you go into that networking event, when you go to a comedy show and you see other comedians, you go in with a servant's heart. You don't go in looking to say, okay, who can give me business? You can say, who can I help? Whom can I help? Oh, you know what? I know a show where you'd be perfect for it. Let me give you that contact information. Or you know what? That joke really didn't work, and I tell it like this, and help that person. You look to help all these other people without looking for something in return. And listen, we're all human beings. And if they're good human beings, they're going to try to return the favor. So that's where the networking really comes in. That's the difference between now and pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, you're always looking for something. Post-pandemic, let me give you something. Let me bring a little value to the relationship. So no matter where you are, who you are, what you're doing, if you have that in mind, then all of a sudden, networking is fun. It takes all the pressure off your back. And you're just, going around saying, oh, this is great. And in the back of your head, you're thinking, whom can I help today?
I love that. It really takes the guilt out of it. Have you had to
Precisely.
have you struggled with like the mental gymnastics of that you're doing it with like an alternative motive, or how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I used to. Before I became a professional speaker, about 3.5, 4 years ago, right? Before then, I was corporate, but I found myself being the face of the company. So I found myself, this is after 10 years. So I realized that I'm doing this for myself and not for anybody else. Once I figured out that I was doing everything incorrectly, because I went to a networking event. I'm like, oh, I have to do this amount of numbers, these amount of numbers, and I have to get this amount of cards, and I have to return this many phone calls, and this and that. Forget it. Forget all. I had to let go of all of that. And all of a sudden I went there and I was me. That's the most important part. Be yourself. Be yourself. Laugh with people. Not a fake cringy laugh like, ha, 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 ha. Really enjoy yourself and see what you can do. Once you can do that, the mental gymnastics, it's very easy, right? It's all of a sudden, it's a slam dunk and you're like, oh, you know what? This is pretty easy. And I enjoyed this. I'm going to do this again. And you do it again and again and again. But you realize that the first time you go out, it's not so easy. The way I'm saying it, look, 3.5 years, 4 years of practice, right? So the first time out, it's really not that easy. But the second time out, it'll be a little bit easier. The third time out, it'll be a little bit easier than that. So pretty much by the fourth, fifth time, you're like, hey, you know what? This is pretty easy.
You mentioned earlier that when you're talking to someone, the last thing you want to do is have them notice that your eyes are kind of careening around the room, looking for somebody else to talk to. What are other networking faux pas that people might not know that they're committing?
Well, you have to realize that when you're speaking to somebody, when you're speaking to somebody, you're looking at them directly in the eyes, right? But you wind up talking too much. So that's the second and third faux pas. So don't let your eyes wander. It's very difficult because when I'm talking to you and I see somebody behind you that I really want to talk to, I'm like, let me follow him because I have to see where he's going. No, you have to be talking with the person, speaking with the person. And you, as the networking person, shouldn't be talking. You should be talking 30% of the conversation. So let them talk about their family, let them talk about their recreation, and then you talk about their occupation or whatever else. But that will keep you. It takes a lot of practice. I can't stress this enough. It takes a lot of practice. But you'll do it. And listen, like I said, the first time out, nope, you're not going to do it. I'll tell you right now, you're going to fail, right? You're going to see somebody and your eyes are going to wander, or just your eyes are going to wander. It doesn't matter. Just try to do it. You get better and better each time.
What's on the flip side of that? Too much eye contact because you don't want to creep the person out either.
Yeah, they'll think you're a super creep, that's for sure. If you sit there and stare right in their eyes, like, oh my God, all right, look. No, just be yourself, right? I don't mean stare always 100% of the time in their eyes, but if it wigs you out just a little bit too much, stare at their forehead or their cheek or something else, so you're not looking directly in their eye. I had a bad habit of trying to concentrate on each eye. So it was really because my eyes were going back and forth. So I concentrated just on looking at the bridge of their nose. And it looks like I'm looking right at you, but I'm not.
For someone who is intimidated at even trying this, what are some good kind of generic questions to a brand new person that will bond you and start this relationship that maybe, are safe bets as far as questions to ask? Because I think we all always go to, oh, what do you do? Where are you from? Are there other questions that are kind of just like always available to us?
Well, it's funny because when I was in that situation and somebody came up and says, hey, what brought you here? I said 2017 Dodge. Why? And they're like, what? I said, yeah, I drove it in yesterday, and, that broke everything up. So you have to ask a question that is not related to the business or the event, right? You walk up to somebody. Now, really the introverted person is more likely to have this problem, right? Because the extrovert can always find a question, right? But the introvert, you walk up and you say, you know what? Hey, I like that blazer. That's a really nice looking blazer. Where'd you get it? Or I like your shoes. Where'd you get them? And start talking about the fashion. And that will just break the ice, break the conversation ice, and you'll start that conversation. And then you could say, oh, no, that's really good. But, you know, when they'll talk about either summertime, wintertime, something like that. If it's summertime, you like sports or something like that, or like baseball, or how about I just watched the World Series, or I just watched the Olympics with Jack Hughes, and he just scored the final goal, and that everybody will know about. They'll go, yeah, oh my God, wasn't he great? Yeah, he was great until he lost his front teeth, and go on from there, and that will lead into other questions.
As you've kind of insinuated, this is much trickier for people who tend to be introverts. Have you ever read, I'm blanking on the name, but the book is by Susan Cain, and it's all about how the world isn't designed for introverts?
No, I don't think so. Listen, I've read a lot of books about introverts. I have a lot of newsletters that come into my feed about introverts. I have to stay up on that for me to talk the way I talk, the way that, because I have to know what they're feeling, what's inside they're feeling. You know, if you see somebody, if you're at an event, or better yet, if you're at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, an after hours meeting, because then there's only a limited number of people, and you see that person that grabs the drink and walks over to the wall, you know immediately what type of a personality they have. So walk up to them. Walk up to them and say, "Hey, how you doing? What are you here for? Oh, you here for the Chamber of Commerce meeting? Oh, that's great. What do you do?" And well, I'm a designer. Oh, you know something? That table over there, that's filled with marketing people. Come on, let me introduce you. Walk over and introduce that person, because once they're introduced, then that opens up the window just a little bit, and they'll begin to talk. And then you step away. Don't try to sit there and say, I have something for you to buy. I'm selling something. No, wrong. Step away, because that person will always remember you. They'll always remember you. So that's what you do.
And if I'm the one that tends to go to the wall, is there a way? Because initially you're like, oh, come home with, 15 business cards and make all these notes. There's people who would rather chew off their arm than talk to 15 people. That's how introverted they are. Is there a way to microdose networking?
Well, yes and no. Okay. Networking isn't just for that one on one, right? Because most introverts can do a one on one, no problem. But once they get to a semi larger group, I always say when you network, you go alone. You don't want to share the credit. You don't want to think about anything else but what you have to do. When you're introverted, I was in the Air Force. So I call it having a wingman. And what you do is you bring that person with you who knows you, knows what you do for a living, and how well you do it. Because when you walk in, you say, okay, we're going to go to that table. And the introvert will say, let's go over here, and the other person will say, no, let's go over here. We're here for a reason, right? You walk up to the table, and like I said, you wait for that conversation to come around to you, and you say, oh, you know something? Hey, you know what, Michael, you know a lot about this product. Why don't you tell us something about it? And that's kind of like your introduction. So all of a sudden, it's not as scary. You're just talking about what you were just invited to talk about.
I just had an experience this weekend. So this is very relevant, where if I'm in the room And there's like one person who is just obviously, I don't want to say more important, but like I was in a green room over the weekend with a very famous comedian who I'm sure gets bothered a lot. And when I'm around someone like that who is powerful and has all the status in that space, I don't want to like be bothering them. I almost think it's more like appealing if I'm quieter and kind of wait for it to get to me, and that I'm not trying to like barge in on them and come off as obnoxious by accident. Is that the correct approach, to wait for someone who has power to come to me, or do I need to like come out of my shell a little bit with, how do you do that without burning a bridge with someone who is so influential?
Well, there's several layers that you have to look at. If they are so unbelievably powerful, so unbelievably known, and at the tip of the iceberg, then they will probably start the conversation with you. Those are the people way up top, because I know a few of people like that are so successful, so much that they don't think about it. They don't have to think about doing work because they're always asked to do it, right? It's the people who are a little bit lower than that, who are very successful, make a lot of money, but you feel like there's a wall there, between you. And you being a comedian, this will be a little bit easier for you because you can always make a joke about something, right? So what you do is you have to find something or a situation and make a joke of it and see if they laugh, right? Or if they chuckle. And if they do, then you hit a home run. Even if they just chuckle, that's a home run, right? Because you can say something about that after, right after the joke or something else, and you can try to see whether or not they want to continue the conversation or not. Or because you, of course, want to continue the conversation. But if they don't want to, then they won't. They'll just shut right up. So that's an easy way for you to figure out whether or not, and, one thing I've learned, because I've been around people like that, this for the last 20 years, if they want to, they will talk to you, right? If they want to be left alone, they want to be left alone. That's really it. I know both sides. One person I know who is very, very successful, just he's thinking about what he's going to say when he goes on stage, right? So nobody bothers him. And somebody else who's just as successful, just as they don't, you can't shut them up. They want to talk, 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 talk. So all I had to do was say something, and they immediately turned in and had a conversation. Right? I've also had the conversation. I've made the joke because I always put humor into my presentations about something, and the other person didn't even acknowledge the joke. And I went, well, okay, that's my fault. All right, I won't say a word, and that was it. So I've been on both sides of the coin.
Yeah, it just so happens that I had waited for this person to initiate conversation with me, and thankfully he did. And then I became much more comfortable. And then I was like, oh, okay, he's asking me questions. He's trying to get to know me because I'm here in the room. And I could still kind of sense, when it was like time to stop talking to him and let him and his wife like do their coordination of the rest of their evening and whatnot. So that's probably really good advice, is either you just wait for the person to come to you, or you test the waters a little bit. And if you're sensing that they're not going to be responsive to you and not going to keep engaging, make sure you close your mouth and don't keep going, because you don't want to risk being like the annoying person and burning of the bridge.
Right. That's where you have to figure it out, because you should always test the waters. If you sit there, be quiet, and let the other person make the first move, you'll lose out on 50% of the situations. Right? So you always have to have enough just to start that little bit of conversation. And as you said, you can sense it whether you want to continue it or not. Hopefully they will.
For the non-comedians listening to this, what's a safe approach with someone who's very powerful? What's like a good question or observation that you can say that's safe and that's going to give you like a good read on what the situation is?
Well, for those non-comedians, I would revert back to something like, I like your blazer, or I like your shoes, or like, oh wow, I really like your blazer. Where'd you get that? And you might say, oh, this thing, I don't, it's probably, or my shoes, they're like 10 years old, so I really don't know. Something like that, something off the wall, not related to anything that either one of you talk about, right? If it's something completely out of left field, then that'll make them think and respond to you. If it's right in the line of every time that they see somebody, they ask that question, they're like numb to it. So you always want to ask that out of party question.
Should we avoid acknowledging their body of work and coming out as a fan?
Um, I would say so, right? You have to realize that these are people too. They're just men and women, just like you are. And if you treat them like that, they will feel much better, right? And honestly, because the ones that don't, the ones that look, I'm a star and that's it. I don't want to deal with those people. Unfortunately, there aren't that many of them, at least that I come in contact with. So I would just treat them like a person. Talk to them like a person. Don't talk to them like they're up in the sky. Just talk to them on the same level.
Do you have like a definition for what you would consider the approach?
No, because every person is different. Every situation is different. Every person is different. It's just different. The venue will be different. The person, everything is different. So it's kind of like you have to make it up as you go along, but you cannot say, well, okay, so if I'm in with a corporate speaker that's very successful, I say this, or this is a comedian. I have to say this. Oh no, this is a person who builds houses, but he's so successful, and I should say, forget about that, right? Just walk in, be yourself, and just come up with a little something outside of the venue of what he does, what you do, everything else, make it completely different.
Once we've made that initial introduction, it's our first time meeting. Maybe we're lucky we exchange contact information with somebody. What's your timeline for nurturing that relationship and making the second contact?
Okay, now we're not talking about the super successful, right? You're talking about
No.
you. Okay, good. Because I have a secret sauce when it comes to follow up, right? The follow up is so much more important than actually meeting the person. It's like second to none, right? So after the event, you have your 15 cards with the date, the name of the function, and something you spoke about on the back of the card. When you get home, you're going to write an email that night. Email the person. Hey, Galena, this is Michael. I had a great time tonight. Just wanted to thank you very much for your time. Hope to do business with you soon, Mike. That's it. Just a thank you. The next morning, this is the key thing. The next morning, you write a personal, handwritten note saying almost the same thing, accepting that they're not going to get it for 3 or 4 days. So you're going to write up from the back of your card, hey, Galena, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date at such an event. We spoke about XYZ. Listen, I'm hoping to do hoping to touch base with you soon. Not business. Hoping to touch base with you soon. Hope everything is well, Michael. Fold it up, put your business card in, and send it away. Wait 3 days. The average response rate from an email, what do you think it is?
Less than 30%?
I would say considerably less. It's 2%.
Oh.
You have a 2% chance of somebody returning that first email. after all of my follow-up, I've brought that up to a 75% chance. So you have a really good chance, but you have to follow the sequence. So you wrote that handwritten note. You waited 3 days. They still haven't responded. Hey, Galina, this is Michael. I met you on such and such date, such an event. We spoke about XYZ. I put that on the top of every correspondence I give you. I do that because what? You remember me, right? I all of a sudden on top of mind, like, oh yeah, I remember him. We talked about this, right? Everything you talked about. Listen, I saw Tuesday and Wednesday is fairly open for me. Would you be open for one of those days to speak, Michael? Wait 3 days. If you don't get a response in 3 days, not 2, not 4, 3 days, you write another email. Hey, Galina, this is Michael. I met you on such date, such event. We spoke about XYZ. Listen, I said Tuesday and Wednesday were free. Tuesday's kind of filling up. How's Wednesday? Wait another 3 days. You're a horrible person. You haven't answered me, and I'm very ashamed of you. Okay. So you write another email. Hey, Galina, this is Michael. I met you on such date, such an event. We spoke about XYZ. I said Tuesday and Wednesday were fairly open. Tuesday closed up a little bit. Wednesday seems to be closing up as well. What's a good day for you? So now what does this do? It kind of closes me out and gives you an out, right? Because if you haven't answered me by now, you probably are not, you had no intention of answering me. So do I get rid of your information? No. I put it into my CRM and I put you on what's called a drip campaign. And once a month, I send you an email. Hey, Galina, this is Michael. I met you on such date, such an event. We spoke about XYZ. Just checking in with you to see if I can help you out in any way. Now, you say, like, how long do you do this? Well, I did it, I think, for 7 months. I speak to a lot of event planners, right? Because they hire me to go into businesses, workshops, keynotes, whatever. And I did this to an event planner for 7 months. Finally, she emailed me back like we've been talking every day for the last 7 months. She goes, hey, Michael, how you doing? Yeah, this is Roberta. Just checking you out. Listen, I have an opening for, if you'd like to come and speak, da-da-da-da. I'm like, you're kidding me. Of course, I didn't say that or motion that. I just said, of course. But I got the job 7 months later from when I started 7 months ago.
Is this strategy the squeaky wheel gets the grease?
You want to be aggressive, but not annoying.
Right.
You want to be forward, but not too much. Mm-hmm. So the squeaky wheel, yes, in the beginning, because you don't know what the other person is going through. They could be going on vacation. Their son or daughter could have been sick, or they're getting married, or they had to go because something else happened. You don't know. So for the 2 weeks that this takes, here's a statistic. It takes between 8 and 15 touches for somebody to buy from you. 8 and 15 touches. Do you know how many times, how frustrated somebody will get? Okay, I emailed them 4 times. I sent the dopey thank you card, and they're not responding, so I'm going to give up. Mm-hmm. That's what they want you to do. So you don't. Listen, I keep going until you say no. If you say no, fine, I'll drop you. I'll take you off my list and everything. But if you don't say anything, then I'll keep going. Perseverance and consistency.
You make me want to circle back to this job interview that I had about a month and a half ago, where the woman kind of told me I had the job and then she fell off the face of the earth. She told me she was going to send me like a rates sheet and examples to get going. And I followed up with her like 3 times and she just never responded. I would have let that go. I would have been like, that's a done deal. But now I think I'm going to reach out again.
That's it. And for a person like that, figure once a week.
Yeah.
Figure set a timer for yourself every Monday at 1 o'clock. You're going to send off that email and see what happens.
So would this translate, because I think for people my age and younger, we're not going into those spaces, and especially like nobody has business cards anymore. So I'm thinking that our equivalent is connecting either on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Would you implement the same strategy, same timeline when it comes to social media messaging?
The biggest mistake that I see people of your age group is that you don't have business cards. That's the biggest mistake. Unless you're in a place like San Francisco, the technology hub, when everything is touching your phones, right? But outside of the area, you really have to have that business card for that quick look. Here's my contact information. Do you have yours? I'm going to contact you. Exchange it so you don't have to worry about your phones. You have to have something. And I teach this all the time. And just order 200 cards if you don't network, but have something on you. If you want to connect through LinkedIn, then you find your connections and you connect. If somebody connects with you, then you have a predetermined something that you write, right? That is about you and some sort of value you're bringing to that person. So then you're doing the same thing. Okay, they connected with you. They said, oh, thank you for the information. And you then find whatever they do. If it's a hotel, maybe it's a cleaning service, I don't know. You find something, an article, and you attach it and you reach out to that person through LinkedIn and say, hey, David, I just found this. I thought you might find it interesting, Michael. And let it go. Do that 2, 3, 4 times. They will, unless they're a bumblehead, they will return in kind. At least give you the time for a conversation.
We mentioned earlier that Gen Z sucks at this.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, can you say more?
Well, unfortunately, I can, because this is one of my talks. I go to high schools and I go to colleges, and I explain what the problem is. I have some research papers, some white papers. 1,000 employers was asked, how would you rate a Gen Z employee? Well, 400 of them said, I wouldn't even look at their resume. The other 300 of them said, look, I hired them, but within 3 months they'll be fired. And then the last 100 employers said, we're working with the Gen Z people, right? 900 found a reason to fire them, right? Why? Because the Gen Z person was looking to get that job saying, look, I am sensational. I am so good. I'm technology. I know more than the person interviewing me. I know more because I can just go to my phone, I can get the answer. And what answer do you want? Right? The whole idea is you are being interviewed by this person. This person has the job already. Right? So you have to think about that. You can't go in demanding the hours you want to work. You have to go in saying, okay, these are the hours that are asked of me. Say, okay, if I do this for 6 months, exactly the way you want it, so would I have the opportunity maybe to work from home 1 or 2 days a week? And 9 times out of 10, the answer will be yes. They have to see what type of a worker they're hiring. Are you going to be, are you going to have your head in work? Or are you going to be doing social media all day? And, some of the employers say, I don't allow my employees to use the cell phone while they're at work. That's a little bit drastic. For me, that's like severing my arm, right? If I can't see what's happening with my email and everything else. Especially if you need it for work, it's kind of hindering you. So you have to find that happy medium. You have to find the person that you can trust. And the only way to do that is for the Gen Z person to stand up and say, look, I am going to be the best employee. I am going to follow all of your rules. I'm not going to try to compromise. But in 6 months, can we talk about it? Yes. 9 times out of 10. Yes. And that's what the problem is. There's a story that I put in my presentation to these high school students. My son was vying for a varsity baseball spot. He was 10th grade, and he was trying his best. I'm cutting this short. At the end of the practice, he was like taking his time and not really picking up the equipment. He's like waiting for everybody to leave. Then afterwards, he went up to the coach. He shook his hand, looked him in the eye, and said, Coach, I'm sorry I didn't make it, but I'll work hard and I'll make it next year.
Aw.
And it blew him away, blew the coach away, because he's never been approached by a student that way. Just so happens that during the summer, 2 guys from the varsity team, one broke the wrist, one broke their ankle. He called up my son. He wasn't the best guy, but he was the most coachable and the most respectful. And so that advanced him. So that kind of thing you have to keep in the back of your head, saying, you know what? I realize that, look, I may know more than this guy, but I'm going to let you tell me.
I love that. Is there a little piece of like baby step implementation that people who are terrified of this can take to get just a little bit better?
Yes, you start out in small groups, right? I reference the Chamber of Commerce because in my Chamber of Commerce, there's about 50 people, 40 people that come every week, right? You get to stand up and you speak for 30 seconds, who you are, what you do. And then you have 2 minutes to say exactly what you do. The people that I coach, I can always tell the people in the room that I've coached because I can see how they stand, how they speak, where in the room they speak. I could just tell just by the way that they position themselves, because everything has to do with you making that good of an impression.
I love that. Well, Michael Forman, thank you so much for coming on and doing the show today. If people want to learn more about what you're doing, where should they go?
Very simple. michaelaforman.com. On there, you'll see the plethora of podcasts I've been on. You'll see a sample of each one of my talks, but most of my books that I've written 2 books, one about networking, the other one about podcasting. And if you go down a little bit further, you'll see a contact form, and just put your information in there, and I'll get back in touch with you within 24 hours.
Amazing. Thank you so much for doing the show today.
You are most welcome.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye.